You're still angry about something that happened a long time ago. It surfaces in quiet moments, on commutes, just before sleep, and it costs you more than the original wound ever did. Epictetus, a man who endured far worse than most, developed 3 techniques for exactly this. You can use all 3 tonight. Picture this. A colleague undermined you in a meeting 6 months ago. You handled it professionally in the moment, life moved on, but at 11 p.m., your mind is still composing the reply you never gave. The grudge is not in that meeting room anymore. It is living rent-free inside your head, and you are the one paying. What feels counterintuitive here is this. The fix is not to forgive them in some grand emotional sense, and it is not to confront them. The fix is a shift in where you are looking. Epictetus located the source of suffering with surgical precision, and once you see where he points, the grip of the grudge begins to loosen immediately. Around 108 AD, in the small Greek city of Nicopolis, a former slave named Epictetus was running a school of philosophy out of a modest building near the coast. He had once been owned, physically controlled, and still chose to teach that no external force could touch what mattered most. His students wrote down everything he said, and those notes became the Discourses. Epictetus had earned his conclusions. He was not theorizing about suffering from a comfortable distance. When he said that what injures us is not what happens, but the judgment we place on what happens, he was speaking from a life that had tested that claim at its hardest possible edge. That context matters, because it means this is not optimism. It is engineering. Now tie that directly to your situation. The colleague who undermined you made a choice. That choice belongs entirely to them, sits inside their character, and cannot be undone. What happens in your mind tonight, however, belongs entirely to you. That is the exact boundary Epictetus drew, and the first technique is built on it. Technique 1 is called the division of ownership. The mechanic is simple. You draw a hard line between what was theirs to do and what is yours to carry now. Their action is finished. It is in the past, sealed, unchangeable. Your continued anger is not finished. It is ongoing, present, and within your control to set down. Here's what you literally do tonight. Take a sheet of paper and draw a vertical line down the center. On the left, write every detail of what they actually did, the specific words, the specific moment, the specific harm. On the right, write what has happened inside you since then. The lost sleep, the rehearsed arguments, the background hum of anger on otherwise good days. Look at the right column. That is your list. You did not choose to generate it, but you are the one maintaining it. Epictetus writes in the Discourses that we suffer not from events, but from our opinions about events. The left column is the event. The right column is the opinion you have been feeding. You can stop feeding it. That choice is yours right now. Most people feel a small but real shift after doing that exercise the first time, not because the anger is gone, but because its location has changed. It is no longer a fog that surrounds you. It is an object on a page that you can examine. That shift in position is the beginning of the whole method. But the second technique is where it actually clicks. Technique 2 is the rehearsal of character. This is the one most people skip, and skipping it is why the first technique sometimes loses its effect after a day or two. The mechanic is this: you deliberately rehearse the other person's full character, not just the moment when they wronged you, but the entire human being behind that moment. Epictetus asks a pointed question in the Discourses. When someone acts badly toward you, what did you expect? Not sarcastically. He means it as a genuine inquiry. Every person acts from their own level of understanding, their own fears, their own incomplete reasoning. The colleague who undermined you was operating from exactly the capacity they had at that moment, and that capacity has limits, as all human capacity does. This is not about excusing the behavior. It is about locating it accurately. A person with full wisdom, full security, and full integrity would not have done what they did. The fact that they did it tells you something precise about where they were. That is information, not an insult to absorb indefinitely. Here is the concrete practice for tonight. Think of 3 things you genuinely know about the person beyond the incident. A pressure they were under, a pattern you had noticed before, even something neutral or decent about them. You are not building a defense for them. You are building a complete picture, because your grudge has been feeding on an incomplete one. When you see the full person, the incident loses a quality it has been borrowing. It has felt like a revelation of pure malice, a window into the whole of who they are. But it is not. It is one action by a limited human being in a specific moment. That is a much smaller thing to carry than what you have been carrying. Epictetus was particularly precise on this point. He noted that when we are wronged, we tend to magnify the action until it fills our entire picture of the person. We then spend our energy fighting that magnified image rather than the actual person, who has long since moved on. You are wrestling a shadow you yourself enlarged. Try this as well. Consider what you would have needed to be true about yourself to act the way they acted. What insecurity, what fear, what confusion would have had to be present. This is not sympathy. It is precision. It shrinks the thing back to its actual size, and actual-sized things are far easier to release than magnified ones. The rehearsal of character works because grudges are sustained by the story we tell about the other person, not just by what they did. When the story becomes accurate rather than inflated, the emotional fuel that keeps the grudge running starts to run out. Not all at once. Gradually, and then faster. Now, before the third technique, here is the one misreading that makes people abandon this entire method. They believe that releasing a grudge means agreeing that what happened was acceptable, that dropping the anger is a kind of verdict in the other person's favor. Epictetus never said that. What he said is that your peace is not the same thing as their verdict. You can hold a clear, firm view that what they did was wrong, and simultaneously decide that you will no longer let that wrong live inside your chest at night. Those two positions are not in conflict. One is a judgment about the past, the other is a decision about your present. Epictetus kept those completely separate, and so can you. And now the third technique is ready to land. Technique 3 is the single question close. The mechanic is a question you ask yourself at the exact moment the grudge resurfaces, the moment the memory flashes and the anger begins to rise again. The question is, what am I practicing right now? Not what are they doing? What am I practicing? Epictetus understood that every mental action is practice for the next one. When you replay the grievance, you are not just remembering it. You are training yourself to be faster and better at replaying it. You are building a reflex. The question interrupts that training mid-repetition and forces you to see the process from the outside. Here is the concrete version for tonight. The next time the grudge comes up, whether in the shower, in traffic, or just before sleep, stop and say the question out loud or in writing. What am I practicing right now? Then answer it honestly. You are practicing resentment. You are practicing a specific kind of injury to yourself. Naming the practice strips it of its automatic quality. Then ask the follow-up. What would I rather practice instead? Not what should I feel, which is too abstract. What would I rather practice? This is Epictetan language, the language of a craftsman. You're building something with every mental repetition. The question is only whether you want to keep building this particular thing. The answer might be, I would rather practice attention on what is in front of me. Or, I would rather practice the kind of person I want to be by the end of this year. Both answers redirect the mental energy without suppressing it. You are not forcing the anger down. You are giving the energy somewhere better to go. Used together, these three techniques form a sequence. Division of ownership locates the grudge precisely and shows you what belongs to you versus what belongs to the past. Rehearsal of character shrinks the story back to its true size. The single question close interrupts the automatic replay every time it tries to restart. Each one builds on the one before. Epictetus taught that freedom is not the absence of external constraint. He knew about external constraint firsthand. Freedom is the capacity to choose how you relate to what has happened to you. Holding a grudge feels like power over the person who wronged you, but it functions as their continued influence over your interior life. The release of it is not weakness. It is the recovery of territory that was yours. Think about what that grudge has actually cost you in concrete terms. Count the hours of sleep. Count the conversations you were half present for. Count the moments of otherwise good days that it surfaced and dimmed. That is the real price of the incident, not what happened in the original moment, but everything the ongoing anger has extracted since. Epictetus writes that the wise person is not one who never encounters injury, but one who refuses to let injury become a permanent tenant. The grudge moved in after the incident. You did not choose to let it in, but you have the full authority to end the lease. These 3 techniques are not philosophical theory, they are the eviction notice. Start tonight with the simplest entry point. Before you sleep, take 2 minutes with the division of ownership exercise. Draw the line, write both columns. Look at the right column and say, with as much honesty as you can bring to it, this part is mine to set down. You do not have to feel it fully in that moment. You only have to begin the motion. Over the following days, add the rehearsal of character when the memory surfaces. Build the complete picture of the person, not to defend them, but to stop magnifying them. Then introduce the single question. Close. What am I practicing right now? Run all 3 together as a sequence for 1 week. The change will not be dramatic on day 1, but it compounds. The reason Epictetus built his entire philosophy around the distinction between what is ours and what is not ours is that he had experienced the far end of external helplessness. He could not control his legal status, his physical safety, or his early life. What he could control, and what he spent decades refining, was the interior response to all of it. That discipline is available to you right now, tonight, in your current situation. The grudge you are carrying is not evidence of weakness. It is evidence that something genuinely mattered to you, that you have standards, that you care about how you are treated. Epictetus would not ask you to stop caring. He would ask you to stop paying for the same wound twice, once when it happened and once every night since. That second payment is optional. It always was. You now have 3 tools to stop making it. Division of ownership, rehearsal of character, the single question close. Put them to work tonight and watch what begins to shift by morning. If this gave you 1 tool you can use tonight, subscribe. There is a new Stoic technique here every week. Once you start releasing the grudge, you will hit the next wall. The memory keeps looping even after the anger fades. That is exactly what the next video addresses. It is called Stop Replaying That Memory, Epictetus's Loop Breaker, and it picks up precisely where this one ends.